Did you know that there are two separate pathways in our brain that can lead us to feel socially anxious? One path begins in the cerebral cortex and involves how we think about and perceive situations. The other takes a more direct route through the amygdala, two small almond-shaped structures which trigger the anxiety response. Although the cortex may respond to logic, it's the amygdala that requires us to start taking action in order to see results. Hey, I'm Neil and I struggled with social anxiety for more than 2 decades. On this channel, every week, I'll be bringing you the best methods and strategies that I've used in my own life to feel more confident. The cortex is the thinking part of our brains. It's the part of our brain that makes us human. So this pathway focuses on the interpretations, images, and worries that the cortex creates. One of the downsides of the cortex is that it can produce anticipatory thoughts, even when no danger is present, that can lead us to feel anxious. And these thoughts can influence the intensity of that anxiety, so they can either increase it or decrease it. Typical therapy approaches that focus on changing our thoughts will be dealing with this cortex pathway, and by learning to change these, we can begin to reduce what triggers our anxiety and lessening its effects on us. Even though our anxious, worrying thoughts may begin in our cortex, it is always the amygdala that is required to trigger the anxiety response for both pathways. The amygdala is our internal alarm system, and its job is to detect any threat that you see, hear, smell, or feel. It's constantly scanning our environment, and it's ready to respond to the slightest hint of danger. Unlike the cortex, our amygdala doesn't actually produce any conscious thoughts, and it operates a lot quicker, which means it can react before our cortex even knows what's happening. This can mean that many aspects of the anxiety response can actually occur without our conscious knowledge and control, because this can be vital if we need to respond faster than our cortex can actually reason to get us out of danger. It could literally mean life or death. If the anxiety you experience seems to happen so quickly and doesn't seem to have any apparent cause or make any logical sense, then this is likely due to the amygdala pathway. So in the case of social anxiety, you may just be walking down the street and glance in somebody's direction and suddenly experience like a jolt in your solar plexus, or you may hear a voice and you may just suddenly feel on edge for that and not be able to understand why. And this is probably due to your amygdala. The amygdala forms emotional memories that can be anxiety producing, and it does this by attaching emotional significance to situations and objects that you experience. As the amygdala is required to trigger the fight, flight, or fight response in both pathways, this means that a complete approach to dealing with social anxiety means you must handle both the cortex and the amygdala pathways. There are many connections in the brain between the amygdala and the cortex, which means that the amygdala has a lot of control over the way that the cortex responds. In most people, however, there are far fewer connections between the cortex and the amygdala. So this means that once the amygdala has taken charge, then it's very difficult to actually think rationally, as the cortex's thinking processes are overridden. This means that it can be very difficult to use thought-based processes to try and reason away anxiety when it's created by the amygdala, because your cortex doesn't understand why you're feeling anxious, so it can be very difficult to think it away. The amygdala can even release a lot of chemicals that can affect your entire brain, including your cortex, and these emotions can literally change the way you think. They can lead you to having even more thoughts that will spiral out of control, and this means that it's essential to adopt strategies to deal with amygdala-based anxiety. While our cortex pathways may respond to reasoning and logic to reduce anxiety, our amygdala pathway can only learn through experience. So this means that experiences are key to rewiring your amygdala, not intellectual knowledge. The amygdala works through emotional memory, not logical, so in order to change it, you must show through new experiences that there's no longer anything to be afraid of. Logical thought alone cannot overcome social anxiety, because not all of it is caused by the logical and thinking parts of our brains. It's caused by the amygdala. You cannot simply talk your amygdala out of it. Our amygdala's primary goal is to ensure our safety, so persuading it to dial down the anxiety alarm can take some considerable effort, so it can take quite a number of experiences to begin to rewire it, especially if what you are afraid of has been conditioned over and over again over the years. Since our amygdala only learns through experience, it means that we must feel some level of discomfort first before our confidence catches up. So we must take action, and then our feelings will gradually catch up. This means that if you wait until you feel good to actually do something, that you'll probably be waiting around forever, because in order to feel better, you must take action first. You gain confidence by doing things before you actually feel ready to do them. So in the case of social anxiety, if you want to feel better at approaching and talking to new people, you must approach a lot of people, and gradually with time, it will get easier and easier. Acting against our negative feelings means we must do something that we don't feel quite ready to do at the time, because it means that once we've acted, we know that we're going to feel better afterwards. And this just means that most solutions to social anxiety are actually counterintuitive, which is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to actually overcome. Our brains tend to be wired for us to think that we're going to experience the worst case scenario, so we only really learn that by doing the thing we're afraid of, that most of the time these things that we're worried about never actually happen anyway. If you take action enough, then eventually you'll start to realise that you can handle just about anything. So focus on changing your actions, not your feelings. One of the best ways to begin desensitizing your amygdala and teaching it that nothing bad happens is by taking small steps one at a time rather than taking giant leaps. It can also be very beneficial to learn some relaxation techniques before going out and trying to expose yourself to feared situations. So if you learn things like progressive muscle relaxation, then you can learn to relax your muscles in social situations that will enable you to manage the thoughts and uncomfortable emotions and sensations that come up. And then once you've done that, then you can gradually begin to expose yourself to the things that you fear. If you do this right, then you should begin to notice that as you put yourself into situations you feared before, that your amygdala's alarm should gradually get weaker and weaker. Just start by doing one small thing that causes you a little bit of anxiety. So for instance, if you're at a social situation, just talk to someone that causes you a little bit of anxiety, but not too much, and just do that until you feel quite comfortable speaking to them. And then one day, if you keep repeating that strategy, you may find that the next easiest person to talk to is someone that in the past would have caused you a lot of anxiety. You must earn the long-term feeling of comfort by experiencing discomfort many times in the beginning, and most often you'll find that the first few times you do something can feel like the worst, because our brains haven't yet balanced out the actual odds of the worst case scenario happening, so they're just learning to calibrate at the start. Over time, your amygdala will come to learn that it doesn't need to try and protect you in all of these situations, and that you don't need to try and use avoidance to short circuit these distressing feelings. And with time, you'll gradually begin to replace these fear responses with much more relaxing sensations. If you enjoyed this video and you want to watch more, then check out my next one, where I'll be going into a lot more detail about some of these relaxation responses that you can use to try and manage social anxiety in social situations. If you found this content valuable, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.